Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, this story, the story itself, has been kicking around out here in the YouTuberverse and the rest of the social media world, so there's not going to be anything of earth-shattering news here. But this is a story about an FFL in Great Falls, Montana, actually, that recently was served with a very significant search warrant by agents of the IRS. Not the ATF, but the IRS. Now, there's been a lot of people who have already been kicking around and surmising. And one of the things we do, especially when we're a little late getting on an issue like that, is we think that perhaps the better perspective that Washington Gun Law can give you is to sit back for a few days, do our own little research, kind of watch the dust settle, and try to read the tea leaves and see what the hell is really going on here. And many times after we do that, we're able to at least provide you with a more complete picture, or at least perhaps a slightly more calming message. This may not be one of those occasions, however, because as much as I have tried to come up and connect the dots as to some type of innocuous or mildly more innocent explanation of what occurred here, yeah, that's not what I think is happening here. And I think we all need to be very, very aware of it, especially if you live in the Great Falls, Montana area. So today, let's ask ourselves this question. Has the IRS already begun enforcement of the Pistol Brace Rule in Montana? Okay, so I recognize we are late to the party. Everyone else has already talked about it. This is going to be our spin on it. As you know, there is a FFL, Highwood Creek Outfitters in Great Falls, Montana. If you've ever been to Great Falls, Montana, everyone knows how awesome it is. If you haven't been to Great Falls, Montana, you totally should. By the way, we're going to put a link for the Give, Send, Go and any other crowdfunding here for Highwood Creek Outfitters in the links down below so you can show them some love one way or the other. Okay, now this FFL, very reputable FFL in Montana, owned by the same guy, Tom Van Huse, now for the last 13 years. Last week, I believe it was on Wednesday, was served with a search warrant by IRS agents. I did not say ATF agents, I said IRS agents, okay? Armed IRS agents, which again, we could do a whole nother video on that. Now, they were claiming that Mr. Van Huse had neglected to report or willfully failed to report millions of dollars in revenue, which would make Mr. Van Huse the first FFL in the history of the United States to do so well that he could actually get away with not reporting millions of dollars of income. Because for anybody who knows the FFL industry, yes, can you make money in that industry? You can make money. Can you make gobs and gobs of money in that industry? That is very difficult because the profit margins you are running on are much akin to grocery stores. And if anyone understands the economic model of grocery stores, you also understand razor-thin profit margins. Now, why some of us may just still be kind of rolling our eyes and going, okay, what's going on here? What was most concerning is when the IRS agents then took all 13 years worth of Form 4473s. Now, why would the IRS take the 4473s? And what we're hearing is, according to some of the news reports and other people who've been talking about this, is that Form 4473s were not listed as one of the documents to be seized by the IRS. And there's probably good reason why, because for all of you who've all filled out 4473s yourself, you know that there is absolutely no financial information whatsoever put on a Form 4473. A Form 4473 has nothing to do with any type of financial transaction. It is a document that allows both state and local governments, as well as the federal government, as well as the FFL, the ability to run background checks on you so that firearms can be transferred to you, and then makes a record of what firearms were transferred to you on what date. So there is really nothing of a financial interest that you can find on a Form 4473. Now, Mr. Van Huse is already saying, hey, listen, we sell somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 firearms per year. So he's very openly stating about how many 4473s there should be, which if at 13 years at 2,000 per year, you're looking at around 26,000, 27,000 Form 4473s. But Unless that he's claiming he's selling this many and then not reporting them to the IRS, which would basically mean that he has a federal documentation that he sold 26,000 firearms, but he's claiming to the IRS he only sold 15,000 firearms, then Mr. Van Hoos would in fact be the worst tax evader in the history of the United States. But there is absolutely nothing to suggest that this gentleman is doing anything other than running a good, reputable FFL in Great Falls, Montana. So, why would the IRS want Form 4473s? What other kind of information could actually be derived on a Form 4473 that the IRS would be interested in? Well, because for those of you who've watched any of these videos, you know that we have consistently stated that if you're going to get into semi-automatic rifles, or if you're going to be getting into firearms with attached stabilizing braces, the best way to do that is to buy lower receivers and build from there. The reason being is that the information that would be on a Form 4473 would make it almost impossible, not entirely impossible, but quite difficult for any law enforcement agency to trace the existence of any firearm, in this case, a firearm with an attached stabilizing brace. However, if you purchased a completed firearm with an attached stabilizing brace, all of the information necessary for a law enforcement agency to determine that you took possession of one of those firearms would in fact be on that Form 4473. Now, why would the IRS be interested in this and not the ATF? Well, let us remember what the entire purpose is of the National Firearms Act, because the National Firearms Act is actually all about what? That's right, taxation. It's about taxation as much as it's about regulation of firearms. Don't believe me? Here's a few quotes directly from ATF's own website about the National Firearms Act. The law requires the registration of all NFA firearms with the Secretary of the Treasury. Firearms subject to the 1934 Act included shotguns and rifles having barrels less than 18 inches in length. Certain firearms described as any other weapons, machine guns, and firearm mufflers and silencers. So, as you can see, the mere possession of an NFA item must be reported to the Secretary of Treasury. Now, for any of you who've ever had to write a check to the IRS, who is that check made out to? Oh, that's right, it's made out to the Department of Treasury. This is also what the ATF's website states. The NFA imposes a duty on persons transferring NFA firearms as well as mere possessors of unregistered firearms to register them with the Secretary of the Treasury. So, the reason the IRS could have interest in what's contained on a Form 4473 is that they are under the belief that millions of people, or in perhaps this case, using the hypothetical of the Great Falls, Montana, that perhaps thousands of individuals in that area who have shopped at that store in the last 13 years have purchased firearms with attached stabilizing braces. And then many of them have, in fact, decided not to register them. Now, there could be many, many reasons for which a person has not registered them. The firearm could be reconfigured. The firearm could no longer be in existence. The pistol base may have been removed. There are many, many reasons. But if anyone wants to know why the IRS would be interested in what's on a Form 4473, it's only to figure out what firearms were transferred to a person via a 4473 that they now believe should have been transferred to that person via a Form 1 or a Form 4. And their 120-day grace period for which you could register these things tax-free is now expired. And so there is a possibility. And again, I'm just trying to connect some dots. I'm just trying to help you all figure out why the hell the IRS might be in Great Falls, Montana, serving a search warrant there. What interest do they have? The only interest they have is that they believe there are items in that area that are subject to taxation which have not yet been taxed. Now, I know that many out here in the YouTuberverse and other places were just really ranting and raving that this is just yet another example of the Biden administration weaponizing law enforcement to use against their political rivals. All of that, by the way, is in all likelihood entirely true and dead on correct. However, However, there is always something deeper going on here when we're talking about an effort like this. This is not just about scaring some FFL in Great Falls, Montana. And if we were just out to scare an FFL, why would we pick this guy in Great Falls, Montana, which by all accounts is running a good, reputable operation in his community? No, there has to be something else. And the only thing that there could be is that the IRS believes that there is a ton of property in the Great Falls, Montana subject to taxation that has not yet been taxed. If we get any more information, you will all be the first to know. In the meantime, if you all have any questions about what's happening here or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to contact Washington Gun Law by now. But if you don't, that's okay. That information is right down there in the description box. In the meantime, I do want all of you to remember that part of being a lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.